Welcome. Today my guest is Alan Ghazawi. I am so happy and honored to have Alan here because he's going to talk about something that we all need to do, not just in our personal lives, but also in our businesses. Alan is going to talk about how to be enlightened, how to bring enlightenment into business. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Alan Ghazawi. I've been a healthcare IT consultant for over 20 years, helping businesses essentially get out of their own way and help develop processes in a conscientious way, essentially. That's what I do.
I love it. The reason why I brought Alan is because his transformation has been incredible. It just gives me goosebumps to think where you came from and where you're now in terms of your level of awareness and consciousness, how you raised your consciousness and how you changed your entire perspective of how to handle a business. I mean, you are very successful in business anyway, and but the piece that you are bringing in right now is so different than where you were before.
Absolutely.
And I would love for you to share a little bit, if that's okay.
Of course. And so that was my biggest transformation. I'll put a time period around 10 years ago. I was like everybody else. Work, 14-hour days, getting there, stressing myself out, making sure that I met the bottom line, got to me to the place that I needed to be in my business over and over and over and over again. And over that course of the last 10 years, I realized that type of drive is great. Putting that energy into something is wonderful, but it comes with a cost. And that cost was taking its toll on me, on my health, on my spirituality, my emotional status, on everything. Is because I ended up not actually having a life. The life that I was living was my work. And no one wants that. No one wants to just be, unless you're, what's his face from Berkshire Hathaway. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Unless you're someone that actually is striving just to do that in their own life.
Yeah.
Most of us do not.
But it was sort of like your identity.
It was. I was only defined by my work. I would come home from work to do only more work. And I realized over that course of the last 10 years that the best thing for me was to take myself out of it. And that doesn't mean not work hard. What that meant was take myself out, look at it from the outside in, and determine what that actually was doing to me as a person. And the growth that I've seen was the further and further I stepped away from that business model, that life that defined me, the closer and closer I got to who I truly am inside.
So it's sort of like taking the ego out of the equation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're all run by our ego. It's what gets us up in the morning. It's what allows us to say, I have a schedule, I need to do this, I need to do that. But it's also our biggest distraction in life.
How was the ego distracting you? What was it like to your spirituality before?
Spirituality. It wasn't. It was my spirituality was put into a box. It was, I did this every Sunday. I went to church every Sunday, and this was fun. It was good. It's what I needed to make sure that I can then, the next week, do whatever I wanted. I could, eat whatever I wanted. I could yell at someone in the car because they cut me off. And then I would go to that nice box church, and I would be forgiven, and I would continue on over and over and over again. It wasn't until I realized that the ego was what was defining that, defining what that meant. Pulled myself out of it, took a look from afar, and then started to develop my own spirituality. And that doesn't mean that I go to church every day. It doesn't mean that I follow a specific religion. What it means is that I become in touch with myself and what I want out of life. The path that has been laid out in front of me, rather than the definition of the path that I have chosen over a course of time, defined by somebody else that has put me on. And that was another big thing for me as well. And that's what I actually talk to people about in business, is defining your success, what actually that means. Because we all have a definition that is imposed upon us. We all, from society, from environment, from parents, it's defined for you. When you go to bed, when you're supposed to get married, when you're supposed to have kids, what job you're supposed to have. I mean, just look at the example, and you see this all the time, is that kids come to school and they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? The child doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up. They want to be a kid. They want to run around. They want to play in the yard. Giving them a choice, saying you need to choose what you want, already puts that definition on them of a path they have to choose. And yes, some of them are like, I want to be an astronaut. Fantastic. Well, of course, we all want to be an astronaut. But who gave them that choice? Who talked to them about that?
Yeah.
Rather than being present, how about, what do you want to do today?
Yeah.
What do you want to do an hour from now? Do you want to go play outside? Do you want to draw something? Do you want to do something? Be present in today.
And when you mentioned the eagle, how was the eagle in your picture before as compared to now?
My ego is very, almost non-existent. It's still something.
Would you describe a little bit what the ego is in your perspective?
In my perspective, it was the thing that was stopping me from doing what I wanted to do. It was fear, anxiety, depression. It was all the things that say, you're okay the way you are right now. It is good because it's your protector. It is your protector, but it's also the thing that impedes you from growing. And so how it was before was, I was overweight, I was overworked, I was overstressed, and my ego would say, it's okay.
Wow.
You're good right here. Look at what you're doing. Look at the money that you're making. Look at what you're building. It's okay. Look at what's happening over here.
Wow.
And so it was protecting me from what I was already feeling. The fear and the anxiety of being like this all the time.
Wow.
It was saying it's okay. And so once I pulled myself out, once I stopped that, I saw I am not okay. I wasn't okay in business. I wasn't okay personally. I wasn't okay. I needed that transformation. I needed that. What's the saying? You need a reason for a revolution.
Like an awakening.
An awakening. And what that came for me was loss. That was the thing that catapulted me into that revolutionary state.
Yeah.
That awakening that I needed. And it wasn't one loss. It wasn't two. There was 3 losses consecutive over the course of the 10 years that I was talking to you about. That catapulted me into what now? And that was both my parents and my best friend. All that. And I all of a sudden sat there and said, holy shit, what now? Where am I now? What do I do now? I didn't have that parental guidance where I could call up my mother and I can say, hey, Mom, I've got this decision to make, or hey, Dad, what do you think about this? I didn't have that anymore. And so the moment that I didn't have that anymore, I started questioning everything. Why do I need to do this? Why do I think this way? Why do I get angry when someone cuts me off in the car? I started questioning. And that led from personal right into business.
Wow. Wow. The definition that I know of ego is sort of like this thoughts, this thoughts that run through your mind that are saying, hey, stay like this, operate this way, think this way because you'll be safe. And it's not that we need to kill the ego, we actually have to rebuild the ego and give it its place. Meaning, we talk about, we might venture into new things, and the ego is going to say, no, don't do that, because if you do that, you might fail. And if you fail, you might be rejected. If you are rejected, you might end up alone, or whatever it is that the ego is trying to protect you from. And so it paralyzes you, it puts you back into that toxic space where you're stuck doing the same things because it's safe. It's not okay to take risks.
And that in business is a killer. Because when you start talking about opportunity and not passing up an opportunity, your ego is the thing that is stopping you from saying, okay, well, this thing's out there. Maybe I should do it. Oh, no. Just be safe. You got this thing going on. It's okay. It's going to be fine. Opportunity. Without opportunity, there's no business there.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to the piece that I wanted to ask you about. What I'm understanding, you help businesses.
Yes.
Like, tell me a little bit about it.
So, I mean, it's really, I help a lot of small businesses. I've been called into larger companies to help a specific process and develop a specific process. But my business is that I help small entrepreneurs, ones that need to sometimes get out of their own way. And I always, when I get hired to come into a small business, I always start by saying, what is your definition of success? Because that, in a small business environment, is what's going to propel this company forward. And it can be anything, and it's your choice. It can be, I want to make a nice living so that I can travel around the world when I want and, you know, be able to retire when I'm 55. Or it can be, I want to get myself a G5 plane. I want to build this up right now because that's what you want, and that's what it's all about. It's your definition, not somebody else's, not social media telling you what you should be doing, or somebody else that your parents telling you what you should be doing. It's you defining yourself. And then once that definition comes out and you know what you want, then I help them build the processes to put in place that definition.
And how do you bring enlightenment into that piece?
Well, that's the whole definition of finding your success. Is that's where you find it. And then from my point of view and how I run my businesses is I bring forth conscientious capitalism. It's kind of like a mold between that and right livelihood, a Buddhist philosophy. Is you make as much as your life as you need in your life, and the rest doesn't matter. You know, it's being good to someone else, not, you know, releasing some product that's going to harm someone, bringing value to your service or to your product. Those are the things that happen.
Without killing yourself in the process.
Exactly. Not only yourself, but others, your employees, all of that. Is that you? That's what I bring. That's why I say enlightenment in business. Is because those concepts are very difficult now.
Yes.
Because people just want to push. Consume. I mean, look at the fashion industry. Look at Forever 21. Their model specifically is, I'm going to release something new every single week.
Wow.
And it's not just one thing. It's a whole line of clothing because it's all about disposable products. It's all, and I don't feel create value other than offering cheap clothing. What they do is they just push. And that is to increase their profitability and to take a larger market share of where they are, of their industry. And that is, I find, not conscientious capitalism.
So how would you help a business like that?
Well, I wouldn't help a business like that. I mean, if you're asking what I would tell them to do is start producing products that can last longer than a week. You know, if we're talking about bringing this right livelihood into any type of business that's a multi-billion-dollar business, it's difficult because they build their business on those founding principles, which is why I focus more on small businesses because these are the people that want longevity. They want change. They want to be able to say, I've got this wonderful business. I've built this ecosystem that I love. The employees that work for me, they work for me for 10 years and I want to continue on this. And I want to be solvent. I don't want to go insolvent. I don't want to find myself in 20 years the business closing. How do I do that?
Yeah, and in harmony with the earth, with people, with everyone.
Everything. And it's difficult. It really is. Because I'm not perfect either. I fall into the same, listen, I love money. We all love money. Of course we do. You know, and money makes life a little bit easier.
Yes.
It really does. And so, you know, I want that nice car. I want that nice house. I want these things, but that's my definition. It's what I want.
Yes.
But everything else doesn't matter. I'm not going to steal from someone or, you know, take advantage of someone else just because.
Yes.
I have a program, a settlement program. It's broken myself. This costs this much. I'm not going to charge you different than I charge someone else just because I can. That principle.
That's consciousness, conscious building a business. And something you just brought up.
It's also seeing yourself in that other person, which is very difficult for everybody, especially when it comes to business. Is how would you like to be treated? How would you talk to someone else? In a personal relationship, that everybody talks about that, is you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Yeah. It's a famous thing, a statement like that. But in business, put yourself. You know, when you read books like, you know, any book that's out there that says, in any type of deal, someone's always going to leave the table unhappy. I don't do that. I find a common ground that makes us both happy. And people say, well, that's not capitalism, that's not proper. No, it is. Absolutely. Because if you want something, I have something. If I want something, you have something, we can come to terms that'll make it profitable for both of us to move it forward.
That's awesome. And you mentioned something about, well, I want a nice car, I want a nice house, I want this and this and that. But what I've seen in you over the years is going from the ego wanting to your soul wanting.
Correct.
Would you explain the difference a little bit?
Yeah, so it's, again, back to my true self, is that it's not my ego saying, I saw this in a magazine. This is a status symbol. This is where I need to be so that other people can like me. So I get the gigantic house, I get the Ferrari or the Lamborghini, and I have the boat. No. Those things, that's what was driving me before, is that I wanted that status symbol. I wanted to be able to drive down the street, someone look at me and be like, ooh, that guy must be cool because he drives that nice car. Or have people over my house and say, oh, this guy must be super cool because he has this and that. I want those things now because I want a certain level of things for myself.
Yeah.
For me, it's not a gigantic home. It's not 15 cars in the driveway because that's wasteful. I won't even ever drive those 15 cars. I mean, if I was a collector like Jerry Seinfeld, of course, those things are different because I'm doing that because he wants to collect cars. For me, it's I want this nice house because I want it in my life.
The experience. Yes. The experience. Completely different. You mentioned earlier about bringing enlightenment into the business and sort of putting the ego in its place. And I want to clarify a little bit about in the past, we all do this. We want the Rolex, we want the status, we want to look great. And this is, unfortunately, this is what happens in social media. You put yourself out there and you compare yourself. Who has the best thing? Who has the latest? Who's traveling the most? And you really don't see who's who and what is the real reality. And then you start comparing yourself and feel less than, and your self-esteem drops to the ground, and it just becomes...
And you spiral out of control. You're like, oh my God, I need.
Yeah.
And you're chasing something that doesn't exist. And I saw it on a picture. And it was somebody saying social media doesn't exist. Social media is fake. People just make sure you're aware of that. And it was a picture of a gentleman, no shirt on, with a beer, looks like he's on a beach. And he's taking a picture of himself. He's like, hanging out in the Caribbean this week is super awesome. And someone had taken a picture of him. He was on a construction site, laying on sand. So he wasn't anywhere near that. And it's this constant need for adulation, constant need for someone to say, you're cool, I like you, because of what you're doing. And even the people that are posting, they're posting to put content out there so they get the likes, they can raise their rate, so that they all of a sudden can start to generate capital. It's all about revenue, of course, with social media. It's not about the connection of what it was meant to be. Facebook had it a little bit, is that you can start a group for someone that you've lost, and everybody can contribute to that group and say how much they miss you, and happy birthday to you, you're not here with us anymore, or I had this dream about you. Those types of things are wonderful because you can experience, you can connect in that environment. But what it's turned into is a marketing tool. It's turned into a business.
Statistics.
Exactly. And how many people are going to follow me? And what I put out there, and it's just you get yourself lost.
And how would you say that affects spirituality and connection?
Kills it.
In what way?
Well, I mean, you look at this. I can never talk to you for a year, but I can see everything that you're doing. So that connection between, that human connection between us drops off. It drops off because you're so focused on this. And it's actually making more and more people lonely, alone, because all they see is other people doing fantastic things. And they're like, why am I not doing fantastic things?
Yes.
So you get more and more depressed, more and more lonely,
isolated.
More and more your spirituality disappears because you're now a technophile. You're built in technology. And that's all you pray to every day. You look at that. You look at the difference between the two.
I was just going to ask you that.
Is that some people used to wake up, and I'm not a super religious person, but people wake up and they would read from the Bible, or they would read from something like a calendar that had the Psalms on it, something like that. Not anymore. Now people pick up the phone, flip, and that's it. The first thing that they do when they wake up, instead of getting up and breathing, taking a shower, thinking about your day, thinking about who you are.
Being grateful.
No, it's what did I miss?
How many likes did I get on that post? Or what did I do?
And so it's people are lonely.
And I can see how that can influence your spirituality, because you mentioned earlier when we were talking about how, yes, people are connected through the net, but they're disconnected with each other, and they're disconnected with something bigger as well.
Absolutely. Because we
From
need
nature.
We need human connection. We need it. And you know, people sometimes get upset because they'll go on a subway and they're like, oh, I was lost in the human experience because there were so many people around. Like, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. You know, I got laughed at, and this was someone that's very dear to me. She laughed at me because I was in New York for New Year's. And it was the first time that I ever went down there for New Year's. And I went out with the ball drop. I was in Times Square, and I was just impacted with people.
Yeah.
And I still get goosebumps to this day because I'm sitting there and everybody is swaying, singing Frank Sinatra's song. And it was that one consciousness.
Oh, it's giving me goosebumps.
Everybody together focused on one thing, singing together. And we need that.
Yes.
We need it in our lives. We need to be close to each other. We need to feel a little uncomfortable at times because I'm next to someone. Because the further and further we get from that, the more and more we lose our spirituality, our connection to something greater, something bigger.
And so how do you bring that to businesses?
That's a very good question. Is with the staff, with your employees. If I'm talking to a business owner and I say, how many times do you meet with your employees? Do you talk to them every day? Are you there with them in the same room? Do you interact with them? Do you get that collaborative spirit in there? 75% of the time, they don't.
Wow.
They come in and sit behind the computer, they do their work, they have tasks that their staff has to do, and that's their integration. And my whole focus is collaborative intelligence.
And the spirit.
Yeah.
The spirit.
The connection.
Yeah.
Is that if I'm in there and sitting there, and actually a staff member told me last week, she says, when you're not, because I was away in Austin last week, and she said, when you're not there, I can feel the difference in energy. It's because as a business owner, from a small business standpoint, when you step into that building, the energy that you bring in is the energy that is disseminated across your staff.
Yes.
100%. So if you come in with a bad mood, guess what? Everybody's going to be in a bad mood or closed off.
Wow.
And you can have a bad day. Everybody has bad days. But the thing is that the moment that you step in there and you center yourself again and you bring that energy, you say, hey guys, this is what we're going on today. This is what's happening today. Give me your ideas. Talk to me.
That's beautiful.
And so that changes everything.
And that makes so much sense. You work with the business owner on how to create a community in his own business, how he needs to get centered, how his energy needs to be not from ego and greed, but from connection and spirituality and helping the community, connecting with the world, harmony with everything.
Yes.
You help them create that so their employees feel that, so the production demonstrates that. That's beautiful.
And that's why I always say, I said it here, ecosystem. You build your ecosystem. I choose that word specifically because what is an ecosystem? Every part of something relies on something else.
Yeah.
And so when you're in there and you create that they rely upon you just as much as you rely upon them. And that's why it's so incredibly important to build that collaborative intelligence model that I talk to my clients about all the time. Is that, 20 years ago, when you go to school, you would get that intelligence. You would be ranked high because, yes, I went to Stanford and Harvard, and I have this wonderful, vast knowledge. Well, you don't need that anymore. Why? It's because we all carry around a one little device that's in our pocket that we can research any information on our business. What's more important is understanding the way your staff, your employees, your workers are. And you bring them into the development of your business. Even if they are a receptionist, it doesn't make a difference. Everybody has a valid point. Everybody has a perception that is warranted, that makes a business grow over and over.
That's beautiful. And do you see the difference between when you were operating from your ego and now that you're operating from enlightenment?
Yes, because I wouldn't listen to anything. I knew what was best. I was on a path. This is where I wanted to go. I saw the end goal. Now it's great to have an end goal. Next strategy, always an intimate business model. But I was so strict, my blinders were up. I didn't see anybody. I didn't care about their opinions. Somebody would tell me their opinions, and I'd be like, I hate it. 3 months later, I probably do. Because I would remember that they told it to me, and I would think that I would come to it. And so not only did that slow down the growth of my business, but it also turned me into an asshole. And I'm not an asshole. I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to be that person in my life. It's listening. That once you break away from that, once you break away from the fear of listening to someone else that might degrade you or put you down or put you into a place that you're not supposed to be.
Ego.
Every time. Once you move past that, then you'll see not only will you increase your wealth, but I'm not just talking about monetary compensation. Your wealth, your involvement in your own ecosystem, your spirituality, and everything that you want to attain, that we all want to attain. And I know sometimes it sounds a little hokey, spirituality and you gotta grow. No, it's 100% true. I'm living proof of it. I am, because of where I was 5 years ago to where I am today. And my wealth has increased 10 times.
How?
Monetary as well as
Can you tell me a few examples of how it was before and how is it now?
Yeah, sure. So, before, there's so many examples. So before it would be that I would have a project that I needed to complete. Okay? And this project was difficult or it was time consuming. And so I would focus on doing it myself. Even though I had other people that I work with, they can contribute to different parts to give me the ability to leapfrog it, get it done quicker. No, did it myself. Control every aspect of it. Even now, I still do it. One of my managers got mad at me the other day because I changed the process without letting her know. And she said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm sorry." Right.
Oops. Back to Enlightenment.
Exactly. And then I still slip up. Listen, I'm not perfect. No one is.
No one.
You can't be.
Yeah.
And so some of those things still jump out at me. But that was the difference before and now. Is that before I was so blinded by my own ego, by my own drive and ambition. And I know ambition is used as a positive term, but it's also a negative at the same time. Because it can close you off to everything else. And I was on that path, and so I wouldn't listen to anybody. I would do it all myself. It would take me twice as long. And I would get to the end result, but
stressed, overweight, feeling like crap, and not sleeping well.
Right. Whereas now, I have a reliable team where I can say, this is the project, these are the things I need from each of you. This is the outline that I put together. Start from these things, here's our deadline, we'll get to that.
And how does that translate into your being, into your wealth that you're talking about?
Look at me.
Yeah.
I mean, you've known me before, than I am now. I guess you guys haven't, but now you can tell.
Yes.
Calmness.
Totally.
Even though something else is happening. And people may say, when they watch the video, they'll say, like, no shit. That's what I do. Yeah, it might be what you do. It might be something that you do yourself, but that doesn't mean that you do it all the time. Yeah. And it's all of us, we all slip back into that.
Yes.
And it's calmness, it's ease, it's no longer snap judgment on you, it's patience.
Yes.
It's everything.
And it's translated into health, into, actually, you look younger. That's way before.
10 years younger.
Totally, seriously, it's incredible. Your level of stress is lower, you're looking at exploring the world a little bit more, new adventures, getting to know yourself, living life, not putting the money as a god necessarily, but putting yourself first and putting your spirituality as the priority for you, not losing sight. Because a lot of people think, well, if I'm a spiritual person, then I'm poor. Or if I'm rich, I'm ego-driven. But the reason why I wanted to have you here is because I wanted to give you guys a clear perspective of how you can have both. You can have spirituality and wealth in many areas of your life. Your wealth in finances, in health, in friendships, in living life in general.
Exactly.
Yeah. So before we close, I wanted to ask you, where can people find more about you and maybe hire your services if you're a small business?
That's wonderful. It's not necessary, but it's wonderful. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody. And you can find me on my website at gazaurigroup.com. That's GAZAUI group.com. Or LinkedIn, Alain Gazauri.
Awesome. I'll post the link on there. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you guys for watching. If you want more information, I'll put the links below, and any comments are welcome. Thank you.